If you're a fan of stories where humanity defies the galaxy itself, where courage and loyalty rewrite the laws of power, then make sure to hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. Because today's story isn't about a hero with armor or a fleet of ships. It's about a creature that the universe feared, and the man it chose to protect. The Galactic Council chamber rose like a spire of glass and arrogance above the clouds of Arendar Prime. Within its crystalline walls, thousands of delegates from 100 species gathered beneath the cold shimmer of the Hall of Verdicts. Holoscreens projected the same image across the chamber. A beast, black-scaled and night-eyed, crouched beside the wreckage of an entire armada. Its claws dripped molten alloy. Its gaze seemed to follow whoever dared to look too long. The apex predator of Veridus 9. A name whispered like a curse. A creature that had destroyed 3 fleets sent to contain it. Fleets equipped with plasma rail weaponry, gravity mines, and telepathic dampeners. Every weapon that failed only taught it how to adapt. Every assault made it stronger. The Veridus anomaly cannot be contained, droned the voice of High Chancellor Meryltan, a gelatinous creature encased in a diamond exosuit. 378 vessels lost. 9,000 sentients unaccounted for. The creature's aggression increases exponentially. At current trajectory, the apex will leave its system within 50 cycles. Panic buzzed through the crowd. Some delegates screamed for planetary bombardment. Others demanded genetic dissection, cloning control, or total sterilization of the region. All spoke in fear, not strategy. Only one remained silent, Commander Varl Threx. He was unlike the others. Tall, bipedal, his scaled armor glinting silver beneath the chamber lights. A veteran of campaigns older than some civilizations, his right eye was a mechanical implant glowing faint blue, a mark of the campaign on Cormus 9. He had seen planetary wars, black holes unleashed, and the death of stars. But this was different. Commander Threx, the Chancellor said, his voice echoing across the spire, you will lead the 4th Suppression Armada. You will descend upon Veridus 9. You will end the apex. Varl did not bow. His voice was steady, carved from discipline and fatigue. 3 fleets before me have failed. What do you expect me to succeed with that they did not? Obedience, said Meryltan. And no hesitation. There was no applause when Varl accepted the mission. Only silence, the silence of a hall that condemned someone to die. Later, in the private war room, Varl stared at the projections hovering above the black table. The image of the predator rotated slowly, displaying data, biomass readings, unknown genetic sequences, an intelligence index that exceeded all council estimations. It wasn't a beast. It was evolving. Lieutenant Kane entered, sharp and controlled as always, his uniform spotless, his tusked face grim. Orders are locked. We depart within the cycle. Permission to speak freely? Varl nodded. This isn't suppression, Kane said quietly. It's a suicide order. They don't want to stop it. They want us to die proving it can't be stopped. Varl's metallic eye shifted toward him, narrowing. Then we'll prove them wrong. The lieutenant hesitated. Sir, some whisper the creature is guarding something. A signal was detected near its territory, not natural, not alien. Human. The word hung in the air like a ghost. Humanity, the vanished pioneers. The lost species that once shook the stars and then simply disappeared. The council never spoke their name without unease. Humans were myths now, too dangerous in story, too unpredictable in truth. Varl dismissed the projection. There are no humans in council space. Only myths and warnings. Kane leaned forward. What if that's why it fights? What if it's protecting? Enough, Varl cut in. We don't speculate. We follow orders. But when the lieutenant left, the commander remained still, staring at the void of the projection table. The predator's eyes glowed faintly from the holographic rotation, staring back into his artificial one. For the first time in decades, Varl Threx felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The following morning, the Armada broke orbit. Hundreds of warships unfolded from Arendar's orbital docks, sleek vessels humming with antimatter cores. The fleet cut through the void toward the green sphere of Veridus 9, a planet wrapped in clouds like bruised silk. From orbit it looked serene. Below it was a killing field. Inside the command ship Tyrant's Edge, Varl watched the readings scroll across his visor. Magnetic interference. Gravity distortions. The planet's atmosphere pulsed with anomalies, like it was alive. Fleet Alpha descent pattern locked, Kane's voice came over the comms. Initiating entry sequence. The first wave pierced the clouds. Immediately the storm struck back. Lightning arcs, bright enough to blind sensors, tore through the formation. One vessel vanished in a burst of plasma. Another disintegrated mid-air. Varl gritted his teeth. Compensate. Maintain formation. They broke through into the emerald jungle below, an ocean of green and shadow stretching to the horizon. The air shimmered with spores that glowed like dust caught in sunlight. Everything moved. The trees swayed with purpose. The ground seemed to breathe. Deploy ground units, Varl ordered. I want full scans, full spectrum. No assumptions. Drop ships screamed through the canopy, deploying mechanized infantry with magnetic stabilizers. Within minutes, the jungle swallowed them whole. Static crackled through comms. One by one, signals faded. Kane's voice came back tight and low. Commander, we're losing drone telemetry. Something's jamming us. Biological interference. I'm reading distortions ahead. Visuals. Holograms flickered, a mangled war mech half buried in vines. The insignia of the 3rd Suppression Fleet painted across its shoulder. Its armor was clawed open as if by molten talons. And on the ground near it, tracks. Not random. Patterned. Purposeful. Gods, Kane breathed. It walks upright. Varl zoomed in. The stride was long. The depth of each footprint implied strength beyond calculation. But something else caught his eye, smaller tracks beside it. Lighter. Human-shaped. He froze. Commander? Kane asked. Continue scanning, Varl said quietly. And keep this off council record. They advanced deeper into the jungle. The air grew thicker, charged. Every instinct screamed at Varl that they were being watched. The canopy above whispered like breathing. Then the world went still. A low vibration rippled through the soil, then a roar so deep it felt like the planet itself was exhaling fury. The trees bent outward as something massive moved through them. The first soldier opened fire. Plasma bolts seared through the air, then vanished, absorbed by something blacker than shadow. The predator emerged. It was colossal, a silhouette of muscle and scale, eyes like molten amber, claws long enough to split a tank. The ground shook with each step. Yet its movement was deliberate, almost intelligent. It didn't charge blindly. It studied them. Varl raised his weapon, aiming for its head. Fire on my mark. Then it stopped. The creature's head turned slightly. Behind the alien soldiers, a faint cry echoed, small, human, unmistakable. The predator's gaze shifted past them. Varl turned, disbelief flooding his mind. A human child stood there, barefoot, holding a carved wooden pendant. Pale, terrified, and alive. Before anyone could react, the predator moved. It stepped between the soldiers and the child, lowering itself slightly, claws poised, not to kill but to shield. The alien squad froze. The air felt like a held breath. Kane whispered, "Sir, it's protecting the human." The predator's gaze met Varl's for an instant, and in that unspoken moment the commander understood. The creature was not the council's weapon nor their enemy. It was something else entirely. A guardian. Before Varl could speak, the predator turned, disappearing into the jungle's embrace with the child in its arms. Only silence remained, thick, suffocating, full of revelation. Varl lowered his weapon, his artificial eye dimming to a faint glow. "Send this report," he said softly, his voice cracking the quiet. "The apex is not the threat. The council is hunting the wrong monster." Above them, the sky rumbled with distant thunder, the sound of something ancient, waking. And far across the galaxy, the council would soon learn that not all monsters are born to destroy. Some are born to protect. The storm over Vera this 9 hadn't stopped since the fleet entered orbit. Black lightning stitched across the sky, illuminating the jungle canopy like a heartbeat in the dark. Commander Varl Threx stood at the edge of the drop bay, armor slick with rain, staring into a world that shouldn't exist. The child's cry still haunted his memory, the sound too pure for a battlefield. The predator's eyes, filled not with hunger but with purpose, haunted him more. "Ground teams ready," Kane reported, strapping into his descent harness. "We lost 8 ships during entry. Atmospheric distortions are spreading, but Central Command still demands confirmation on the anomaly." Varl adjusted his visor. "No mention of the human?" Kane hesitated. "None. The report we sent was filtered before uplink. The council doesn't want it known." "Of course not," Varl muttered. "Truth is bad for control." The drop bay opened. Air rushed in like a living thing, thick and wet with the smell of alien flora. The jungle below glowed faintly, a sea of phosphorescent green veins pulsing beneath the mist. Varl's boots hit the soil with a dull thud, and the ground gave slightly, like stepping onto the back of a creature that was breathing. the squad moved in formation. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning for heat signatures. Every tree dripped condensation. Every movement in the leaves felt deliberate. And always, somewhere unseen, the low hum of something vast shifting through the forest floor. Kane's voice broke the static. "Commander, infrared sweep ahead, metallic shapes. Large. Advance," Varl ordered, raising his rifle. They pushed through thick ferns and found the remains of the Third Armada, hundreds of ships torn apart, their hulls melted like wax. Varl ran a gloved hand across a scorched insignia. It wasn't the work of weaponry. The destruction looked biological, as though the metal itself had been dissolved cell by cell. One of the soldiers knelt beside a crater. "Sir, there's organic residue here. DNA signatures, matching the apex. But it's mixed with," he stopped, frowning, "human genetic fragments." The words hit like a pulse grenade. Varl's mechanical eye flickered. "Run it again." "I did. Same result." Kane glanced around the jungle, voice low. "Humans aren't supposed to be here. They haven't been for centuries. But the predator's DNA is mingled with theirs. That's impossible." Varl didn't answer. His mind was a storm of conflicting instincts: soldier, skeptic, witness. The council's version of reality was unraveling faster than the jungle's vines could regrow over their tracks. A sudden tremor ran through the ground. Birds erupted from the canopy, shrieking. Then silence. Every soldier turned outward, weapons raised. The jungle seemed to lean toward them. "Contact," Kane whispered. "Sector 3. Something moved between the trees, a blur of motion, massive and sinuous. It circled them fast enough that sensors lagged to keep up. The creature was toying with them. Varl could feel it in his gut. He'd hunted predators before. He recognized the rhythm. This one wasn't hunting to feed. It was testing. "Hold fire," Varl warned. "Let it reveal its intent." A low growl vibrated the air. From the mist, a shape emerged, tall, muscular, its skin like obsidian armor streaked with faint blue biolight. It stared at them with eerie calm. The soldiers tightened their formation, but it didn't attack. Then, without a sound, another figure appeared behind Varl, smaller, hooded, humanoid. Instinct took over. He spun and aimed. The figure raised its hands. "Don't shoot," said a voice, rough, deep, undeniably human. The soldiers froze. Even Kane's jaw went slack. Varl's pulse hammered in his throat. The man stepped into the light, lean, weathered, his clothes handmade from hides and woven fibers, his face lined with sun and time. "I'm not your enemy," he said, lowering his hood. "But if you keep walking in that direction, you'll be dead before you finish the next step." Varl studied him in silence. "You're a human." "Yeah," the man replied. "Name's Elias Ward. Captain Watts. Now just someone trying to keep his people alive." Kane blinked. "There are more of you?" "A few dozen. Enough to make it worth protecting." Elias's eyes flicked to the looming shadow of the predator behind him. "And he's the reason we still can." The predator stepped closer, its movements fluid, cautious. The soldiers raised their weapons again, but Elias lifted a hand. The creature stopped, then knelt beside him. For a moment, it looked almost deferential. "You control it?" Varl asked. Elias shook his head. "No one controls him. I saved his kin once, years ago, when this planet was burning from orbit strikes. He didn't forget." Kane whispered, "He protects you." "That's one way to say it. Another way is, he made a choice. Something your council never understood." The jungle around them rustled. Tiny, luminous insects drifted through the mist like wandering sparks. Elias looked at them with quiet familiarity. He didn't fear the world. He belonged to it. Varl took a cautious step closer. "Why hasn't the council been told? You're the first humans we've encountered in 5 centuries. They'll tear apart the galaxy to bring you back." Elias laughed softly. "That's exactly why we stayed hidden. The council doesn't bring people back. It cages them." "You're suggesting we abandon protocol?" "I'm suggesting you see the truth before protocol kills you." Elias turned, gesturing deeper into the forest. "Come with me. You need to see what the predator's guarding." They followed him through the dense terrain, flanked by the silent behemoth. The deeper they went, the more the jungle changed. The trees larger, older, their trunks etched with strange metallic veins. The ground vibrated with an underlying hum, like a dormant machine breathing beneath the soil. Elias led them into a clearing where light poured down through a break in the canopy. Nestled there, against the curve of a stone ridge, was a village. Dozens of humans, young and old, moving between huts woven from living branches. Smoke from cook fires spiraled into the mist. Children ran barefoot across the grass. Cain couldn't look away. By the stars, they survived. They thrived, Elias said quietly. And the apex kept every predator, every invader, every scavenger away. Varl watched as a child handed the predator a carved stick. The massive creature took it delicately, almost reverently before setting it aside. The sight cracked something inside him, a fracture between everything he'd been taught and everything he saw. Why? Varl asked. Why does it do this? Elias looked him dead in the eye. Because once a man didn't run from it. Once a human stood his ground and showed mercy. And for reasons no scientist ever managed to explain, that mattered. A low rumble rolled through the air. The predator's head turned, eyes narrowing toward the distant horizon. Elias stiffened. They found us. Cain activated his scanner. Incoming ships, council signatures. They must have traced our descent vectors. Then we're out of time, Elias said, gripping the pendant around his neck. Your orders were to kill what you couldn't understand. Mine are simpler. Protect what's worth dying for. Varl looked up at the sky, now glowing faint red with descending ships. Duty and conscience clashed inside him like tectonic plates. The council had sent him to destroy a monster. Instead, he'd found a man, a village, and something that wasn't supposed to exist. Compassion from the deadliest being in the galaxy. He turned to Elias. If the council attacks, what will you do? Elias's gaze hardened. What I've always done. Survive. The predator's roar echoed through the valley, deep and resonant, shaking the trees and scattering the birds into the bloody light of dawn. The sound was both a warning and a promise, that whatever the council unleashed next, this place would not fall quietly. Varl's mechanical eye recorded everything. The human settlement, the impossible alliance, the defiance in a man's stare. He knew that sending this evidence back would doom them all. But if he didn't, the council would bury the truth beneath fire and silence. He shut off his recorder and turned toward Cain. No transmissions. Not until I say. Cain nodded slowly. You believe him. I believe what I see. Above them, the sky split open as the first council dropships descended. Elias watched the clouds ignite, his face illuminated by firelight, and whispered, Then you'd better be ready, Commander. Because what comes next isn't war, it's reckoning. And as thunder rolled across Vera this 9, the man, the alien commander, and the predator stood together for the first time, on the edge of a battle none of them had chosen, but all of them were born to fight. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't your typical sci-fi war story. It's about survival, trust, and the line between protector and predator. So before we descend deeper into the truth of Vera this 9, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe, because what happens next changes everything the galaxy believed about monsters and men. The first streaks of fire cut across the dawn sky, council dropships punching through the cloud barrier like falling stars. Varl Threx watched them descend from the ridge above the human village, his mechanical eye tracing the vector paths with grim precision. They're not waiting for confirmation, he muttered. They're here to burn it all. Beside him, Elias Ward checked the old plasma rifle slung over his shoulder, a relic scavenged from one of the first crashed ships. Its casing was scratched and scorched, but the weapon still hummed to life with a low growl. Then we'll have to give them something to hesitate about. The village below stirred. Men and women emerged from the huts, gathering their few weapons, crude spears, pulse pistols, scavenged shields. Children were ushered into the underground shelters carved into the roots of the great trees. The predator stood at the center of it all, towering and silent, its obsidian scales glistening with morning dew. It was watching the skies, but its gaze drifted often toward the humans, protective, calculating. Cain approached from behind, voice tense. Commander, we can't hold this position. They'll wipe the valley from orbit. Varl didn't look back. If they wanted to, they already would have. They're coming down because they want proof. That gives us a chance. Proof of what? Cain snapped. Varl's voice was low. That this thing is more than they can control. That it's a symbol they can't afford to let exist. Elias glanced at him. So you finally believe me? I believe, Varl said, eyes fixed on the descending fire trails, that fear makes empires stupid. The roar of thrusters filled the air. Dropships broke through the clouds, massive engines scattering the canopy below. The first wave landed at the edge of the forest. Dozens of armored soldiers poured out, their armor gleaming silver in the sun, each bearing the council's insignia, the mark of order, control, and unquestioned obedience. The predator's head lifted. Its nostrils flared, muscles rippling as it exhaled a deep growl that made the ground tremble. The human villagers flinched, but Elias stepped closer to the creature, resting a hand against its forearm. "Not yet," he murmured. "Wait." The soldiers advanced, weapons raised. Through their formation marched an envoy in white armor, polished and ceremonial. His voice carried through an amplifier, smooth and cold. "By decree of the Galactic Council, all unauthorized lifeforms on Veridis 9 are to be contained or neutralized. Human presence is illegal in restricted sectors. Surrender immediately." Varl stepped forward, armor glinting in the light. "Commander Varl Threx, 4th Suppression Armada. You will stand down." The envoy paused. "Commander Threx, you are relieved of duty for dereliction of command and falsification of transmission records. Orders have come directly from the Chancellor." Varl's jaw tightened. "They want this buried." "They want peace," the envoy corrected. "And peace requires silence." Elias moved beside him, rifle leveled. "Funny where I come from, peace meant everyone had a say." The envoy's visor turned toward him, scanning. "Human origin confirmed. You are under arrest under Article." The predator's roar shattered the air. It leapt forward in an explosion of motion, striking the ground between both sides with a thunderous impact. The envoy's words died in his throat. For a long, silent moment, the beast simply stood there, its head lowered, golden eyes glaring through the haze. No one moved. Then chaos erupted. Energy bolts split the air. The jungle lit up with flashes of white and green. The predator moved like a living storm, claws deflecting plasma, tail sweeping soldiers aside like leaves. Elias fired from behind its flank, picking targets with surgical precision. Varl's command voice cut through the din, directing humans and defected soldiers alike to cover the flanks. Kane's squad took position on the ridge, laying suppressive fire. "They're calling for air support," he shouted over comms. Varl ducked behind a fallen tree, reloading. "Let them come. They'll learn soon enough this isn't a purge, it's a lesson." The predator's roar cracked the sky again, this time joined by the deep thunder of the forest itself. The trees bent as roots tore free from the soil, forming barriers of living wood. The planet responded to the creature's will. Even Varl, hardened soldier that he was, felt the awe of something ancient and intelligent awakening around them. Within minutes the first wave was crushed. The surviving soldiers retreated toward the drop zone, leaving behind scorched armor and twisted wreckage. The jungle began to regrow over the dead before the smoke even cleared. Elias walked through the aftermath, rifle still raised. "They'll be back. They always come back," Varl said. His voice carried no victory, only exhaustion. "And every time they do, they bring bigger guns." Kane joined them, removing his helmet. His face was pale, sweat streaking down his temples. "I never thought I'd see the day I fought alongside what the Council called the most dangerous creature alive." Elias glanced at him. "Then you finally saw what danger really looks like. It's not teeth or claws. It's power without empathy." The predator approached, lowering its massive head to Elias's level. They stood in silence, man and monster breathing the same air, bound by something that neither language nor species could explain. Varl watched the exchange, an ache forming in his chest. He'd served his entire life under orders, under fear. And here stood a human and a beast defying both, united by choice. "Commander," Kane said quietly, "what are your orders?" Varl turned to face the distant glow of the Council fleet in orbit, still visible through the clouds. "Our orders were to eliminate a threat. I believe we found it. But it's not down here." Elias studied him carefully. "You're talking about your people." "I'm talking about mine," Varl replied. "And what happens when they realize fear doesn't work anymore?" The human captain nodded slowly as if weighing the alien's conviction. "Then maybe you're not so different from us." A faint sound broke their moment, a distant rumble overhead. Varl's eye flicked skyward, magnifying the image. Council bombers, dozens of them, breaking atmosphere. "They're escalating." Elias looked toward the shelters, where families huddled in darkness. "We can't hold against that." "We won't," Varl said. "But we can make them question why they're firing." He turned to Kane. "Transmit to all channels, visual feed only. Show them everything. The humans, the village, the predator defending them. The Council wants silence, give them witnesses." Kane hesitated. "That's treason." "So is killing the truth," Varl said flatly. The transmission went live. Across the fleet and across half the Council's network, the image spread, The apex predator not as destroyer but as guardian, soldiers standing beside humans not against them, and a commander defying his orders for the first time in his life. The bombers slowed. Command channels erupted in chaos. No one at the top wanted to authorize a strike that billions would see as murder. Elias exhaled. You just painted a target on yourself, Commander? Good, Varl said, eyes fixed on the heavens. Better me than them. Above, the bombers began to turn away, their engines glowing as they climbed back toward orbit. For a moment hope flickered. The jungle was silent again. Then a single explosion lit the sky. A new ship had entered orbit, black, angular, vast. The Chancellor's flagship. Its shadow blotted out the sun. Through the clouds, a beam of red light began to form, humming with the sound of charged death. Elias stared upward, voice barely a whisper. They're going to glass the whole planet. Varl's mechanical eye brightened, recording the impossible scale of what was coming. Then we make sure the galaxy remembers why. The predator raised its head to the sky, roaring in defiance. The sound carried for miles, echoing through jungle, mountain, and stone, a challenge to an empire that mistook fear for control. Elias gripped his rifle and looked to Varl. You with me? The alien commander nodded. To the end. As the beam above began to fall, the three of them, man, alien, and monster, stood shoulder to shoulder beneath a blood-red sky, knowing there was no more running, no more hiding. Only the choice that had defined them since the beginning: protect what they loved no matter the cost. And as the heavens split open, This 9 prepared to burn, but not alone. The sky burned crimson as the flagship's beam tore through the upper atmosphere, lighting the horizon like a second sun. Trees ignited. The ground shook. For a heartbeat, all sound vanished except the deep, vibrating hum of energy gathering above. Elias felt it in his chest like a slow, heavy drumbeat. He knew that kind of power, not meant to intimidate but to erase. Move! Varl shouted, his voice cutting through the roar. Get everyone underground. Kane and the remaining soldiers scrambled, guiding villagers toward the burrows beneath the roots. Children cried, clutching their mothers as tremors rippled through the soil. Above them, the predator bellowed, its voice an earthquake that rattled the leaves off trees. It wasn't fear. It was challenge. Elias stayed close to Varl as they ran toward the central ridge where the creature stood. The air was thick with static, every hair standing on end. How do we stop that? He yelled, pointing to the red glow splitting the clouds. We don't, Varl answered. We redirect it. The words barely made sense, but Elias trusted the tone, not desperation but calculation. Varl opened a wrist module and began streaming command codes into the atmosphere. The device crackled with interference. I still have partial access to the fleet's uplink network. If I can override the flagship's targeting sequence. Elias caught on fast. You'll paint them another target. Exactly. Then let's make it count. The predator crouched low, its head turning sharply toward them. Its golden eyes flickered as though it understood what was coming. Elias stepped forward, placing his hand on its scaled chest. We're not running this time, he said quietly. The creature blinked once, slow and deliberate, acknowledgement. Varl's device beeped in warning. They're locking coordinates. 60 seconds to impact. Kane's voice broke through the comms, panicked. Commander, we've still got civilians topside. You can't. I'm not leaving anyone behind, Varl snapped. Just hold position. Elias looked toward the treeline. A shimmer of light flickered through the smoke, drop pods descending in tight formation. Council shock troops. Reinforcements. They're sending ground forces too. Varl cursed under his breath. They'll secure the area for the cleansing beam. Unless we make sure there's nothing left to secure, Elias said grimly. The first pod hit the ground like a hammer, scattering dirt and debris. From within emerged soldiers in obsidian armor, the Chancellor's personal enforcers. Silent, faceless, efficient. They moved as one, weapons raised, advancing through the burning forest. Varl stood his ground. So the Chancellor comes himself to bury his secrets. Elias adjusted his rifle. Then let's make sure he sees what truth looks like. The battle exploded with blinding fury. Plasma bolts hissed through the air, searing tree trunks into ash. The predator charged into the fray, smashing through armored ranks with the force of a natural disaster. One soldier fired point-blank into its chest. The creature barely staggered before crushing the attacker beneath its claws. Varl fired precision bursts, dropping soldiers who tried to flank the humans. He fought like a machine. Movements crisp, efficient, honed by decades of training, But there was fury behind every shot. The kind of fury born from betrayal. 50 seconds, his module shrieked. Elias. Kane's voice cut through the chaos. You've got hostiles closing on your left. Elias spun, firing reflexively. 2 soldiers fell, their armor smoking. He ducked behind a fallen tree, panting, the smell of ozone thick in the air. This isn't a fight, he said. It's an execution. Varl's mechanical eye flickered red. Not yet. Through the smoke, a single figure appeared, tall, regal, walking with unhurried precision. His armor was etched in gold, his cape flowing behind him like liquid shadow. The Chancellor himself had come planetside. Elias froze. That's him? Varl nodded grimly. Varencourt. The architect of the purge. The Chancellor's voice carried, calm and cutting. You defy the Council, Commander. You disobey every oath you ever swore. For what? For vermin? For myths. The Predator turned its gaze on the Chancellor, eyes narrowing. The forest trembled. Varl stepped forward. You built an empire on fear, Chancellor. But fear only works until something stops being afraid. Varen tilted his head slightly. Then allow me to remind them why they should be. He raised his hand. The sky answered. The cleansing beam began to fall. Varl's uplink screamed with interference. His fingers flew across the device, rerouting, forcing command pathways open by sheer will. Almost there. The Predator leapt, interposing itself between the beam and the village. The light struck it squarely, engulfing the creature in blinding energy. Elias shielded his eyes, the shockwave knocking him to the ground. The air howled. Dust and fire swallowed everything. When the light faded, silence fell. Elias coughed, pushing himself up. No, no, no. The Predator still stood. Its scales glowed molten red, body smoking, but it was alive. It took one step forward, then another. Each step shook the ground. The energy of the beam flowed along its form, absorbed, redirected, arcing into the ground and back toward the sky. The creature was not dying. It was feeding. Varl's voice was awe and terror combined. It's adapting. The Chancellor took a step back, for the first time uncertain. Impossible. Elias shouted, Now Varl. Redirect it. The commander slammed the final sequence into the uplink. The sky cracked like shattered glass. The energy that had gathered to annihilate the surface now reversed its trajectory, shooting upward, straight into the orbital fleet. One by one the ships ignited. Rings of flame bloomed across the sky as power conduits overloaded. The flagship's engines flared, then tore apart in a flash of white fire. Varl fell to his knees, his device sparking violently. Signal overload, system collapsing. Elias ran to him. You did it? You stopped them. Varl shook his head weakly. No. I only bought us time. The Chancellor won't stop until everything burns. The Predator roared again, louder than before, its voice shaking the air like thunder. Elias looked into its blazing eyes, and for a moment he swore he saw understanding, sorrow, and fury all at once. The creature turned away, facing the mountains beyond the forest. Then with a low growl it began to move. Every tree bent away as it passed, the jungle parting before it. Elias frowned. Where's it going? Varl forced himself to his feet. It knows what the Chancellor will do next. The alien's tone turned grim. He'll detonate the core of his own flagship. A failsafe to erase all evidence, and us along with it. Elias's chest tightened. That would take the entire planet. Varl nodded. Unless someone stops him. Elias glanced toward the creature disappearing into the distance. And you think it means to go up there? I think, Varl said quietly, it's done running. They stood together, watching the Predator vanish into the rising smoke, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat of destiny. The humans behind them began to emerge from the shelters, eyes wide at the burning horizon. For the first time they looked not at a monster, but at their guardian walking toward death to save them. Elias clenched his jaw. Then we follow. Varl looked at him. If we do, there's no coming back. Elias gave a thin, defiant smile. Neither did it. Above them, the sky was a storm of wreckage and flame. The remains of the fleet burned like falling stars. And through that chaos, a streak of crimson light rose from the mountains, the Predator launching itself skyward, wings of molten fire spreading from its back. Elias whispered, God help whoever stands in its way. Varl watched the creature ascend, a strange reverence in his voice. No god will help them now. The two men turned toward the battered remains of a council ship nearby. Its engine still sputtered weakly, plasma leaking from ruptured vents. Elias climbed into the cockpit, eyes burning with determination. You coming? Varl hesitated, looking once more at the village, the people they'd saved, the world they'd defied. Then he followed. Let's finish what we started. As the ship's thrusters roared to life, they rose into the smoke-choked sky, chasing a myth turned reality, a predator ascending to war against the architects of its creation. And far above them, the Chancellor's flagship waited, dark and silent, the final battlefield between empire and defiance. The end of the world had begun. The void above Vera this 9 was alive with fire. Wreckage from the shattered fleet drifted like glowing embers, fragments of once mighty ships tumbling through silence. In the midst of that graveyard rose the Chancellor's flagship, the Vigilant Ascendancy, a spear of obsidian metal and pulsing crimson light. Within its heart, the final decisions of a dying empire waited to be made. Elias and Varl's shuttle tore through the debris field, alarms blaring, hull scorched. The Predator had already reached orbit minutes ahead, a streak of molten light carving its own path through the void. Its trajectory was locked on the flagship, unstoppable. Elias gripped the controls, teeth clenched. We're not going to survive the docking sequence. We don't need to, Varl said, voice calm despite the shaking ship. We just need to hold it together long enough to get inside. Elias forced a grim smile. You've got a strange definition of optimism. The Predator collided with the flagship first. The impact rippled through space, scattering debris and sending the vessel into a slow, spiraling rotation. Hull plating cracked open like ice, molten vents flaring outward. Through the rift, the creature tore its way inside, claws rending through reinforced bulkheads. Elias piloted their shuttle straight into the chaos, following the trail of fire. The ship scraped along the torn hull, then crashed through an opening, grinding to a violent stop inside the flagship's docking bay. The world flipped, then went still. Smoke filled the cabin. Still alive? Elias asked, coughing. Varl groaned, unbuckling his restraints. Barely. He glanced through the shattered viewport. But it seems our friend made an entrance. From the corridor ahead came the sound of metal shrieking, of alarms wailing through broken speakers. The Predator moved like a phantom in the dark, its molten scales glowing faintly, claws glimmering with residual energy from the beam it had absorbed. Every step it took left burning impressions in the deck plating. Elias and Varl pushed through the smoke, weapons raised. The ship trembled underfoot as automated turrets descended from the ceiling, tracking the intruders. Before they could fire, the Predator moved, a blur of motion and violence. In seconds, the turrets lay in ruin, melted slag dripping from the ceiling. Varl scanned the internal sensors through his damaged wrist module. They've sealed the command core. The Chancellor's there. Then that's where we're going, Elias said. The corridors of the flagship were pristine once, built to reflect the glory of the Council, silver floors etched insignias, walls lined with banners of conquest. Now they were war-torn. Flames licked along the edges of fractured panels. The lights flickered in erratic patterns. The grandeur was crumbling. As they moved deeper, Varl's tone changed. You understand what happens if we reach him. The Chancellor will never surrender. He'll activate the core failsafe. Elias kept walking. Then we make sure he can't. Varl stopped him, grip firm. You don't know what that means. That failsafe isn't just self-destruction, it's an implosion device. It will erase this entire sector. Elias met his gaze, unflinching. Then we end it before he presses the button. They reached the central chamber, a vast circular hall with a raised dais at its center, surrounded by transparent panels showing the stars beyond. The Predator was already there, its enormous frame standing before a shimmering force field. Beyond it, the Chancellor waited. Varen Kor stood alone, his white and gold armor gleaming in the artificial light. His expression was calm, almost pitying. I should have known it would come to this. You, the rebel, the deserter, and the beast you worship. Elias leveled his rifle. You call it a beast. I call it something your empire never understood, loyalty. Varen's smile was thin. You think you've saved something noble. But all you've done is prolong the inevitable. Fear maintains order. Remove it and chaos devours everything. Varl stepped forward. Fear maintains obedience, not peace. And you've mistaken one for the other. The Chancellor raised a hand to the console before him. You've lost. Even now my fleets regroup. The failsafe will wipe this system clean. History will remember this as an act of mercy. Before he could act, the Predator slammed into the barrier, claws sparking against the field. The energy crackled, distorting the air. The Chancellor stumbled back. Elias fired at the control panel beside the barrier. Sparks burst outward and the field flickered, destabilizing. Now! The predator lunged. The barrier shattered in a storm of light. It hit the dais, tail sweeping across the room, throwing the Chancellor from his feet. Metal screamed as claws raked against armor. Varen fought back, activating an energy shield and drawing a plasma blade, slashing across the creature's chest. The predator roared, blood, bright silver blue, spraying across the deck. But it didn't falter. Elias and Varl joined the fight. Varl's plasma rifle flared as he covered Elias, who charged toward the main console. If we can reroute the failsafe, we can vent the core, maybe stop the chain reaction. Varl shouted over the noise. That will destroy the ship. Then let's hope we're gone before it does. The predator pinned the Chancellor against the dais. For the first time, Varen's composure cracked. His blade trembled. You think you can kill me and end the council? You've built your rebellion on fantasy. Elias turned from the console, eyes burning with conviction. No, we're building it on truth, and on every world you silenced. The predator's claws pierced the Chancellor's armor. A surge of energy exploded outward, the creature absorbing it, feeding on it as the same molten glow spread through its body again. The ship's lights dimmed. Systems overloaded. Elias! Varl shouted. It's going critical. Then let's finish this. Elias slammed the override lever down. Warning sirens erupted. Core breach in 60 seconds. The predator turned toward them, its golden eyes meeting Elias's one last time. There was no rage now, only understanding. It lowered its head, pressing one clawed hand against the floor, sending a pulse of energy through the ship's systems. The hull began to warp, metal folding inward, forming a cocoon around the command chamber. What's it doing? Elias whispered. Varl realized it first. It's containing the blast. It's sacrificing itself. Elias froze. No, there's another way. The creature gave a low, rumbling sound, not a roar but a farewell. Then, without warning, it unleashed the full energy it had absorbed. Light burst from every fracture, pure and blinding. The ship convulsed, the stars outside collapsing into a sphere of white fire. Elias felt himself lifted, weightless, as the explosion tore everything apart. He thought of the village below, of the faces of those who had survived, of the strange bond between man and monster. Then everything vanished in light. When he opened his eyes, he was falling through atmosphere, surrounded by burning debris. A wing of the shuttle tumbled beside him, and he realized, the predator's final act had thrown them free of the implosion. A miracle or a last gift he didn't know. Varl's voice crackled through the comms. Elias, you alive? Barely, Elias rasped. He looked up. The sky was filled with meteors, the last fragments of the vigilant ascendancy burning away. It's gone. The flagship's gone. Varl's tone softened. And so is the predator. Elias watched a single streak of light drift across the sky, brighter than the rest, slower, as if refusing to fade. No, he said quietly. It's still watching. Somewhere. They crashed into the jungle canopy. The wreckage scattered through the forest, flames dying into smoke. Hours passed before they crawled from the wreck, battered but alive. The villagers had seen the fire from miles away, and when Elias and Varl returned, they were met not with fear but reverence. A child pointed toward the sky, where dawn's first light broke through the clouds. The Guardian's gone, isn't it? She asked softly. Elias knelt beside her. No, he said. It did what Guardians do. It protected us, and made sure we could protect ourselves. The people gathered around, silent, watching the sunrise. Varl stood apart, his mechanical eye flickering as he recorded the moment. The council will come again, he said. Then they'll find something different waiting for them, Elias replied. A world that knows it doesn't need their fear anymore. Varl looked at him, something almost like a smile touching his lips. You sound like a leader. Elias shook his head. Just a survivor. But maybe that's enough. Above them, the sky cleared, revealing the endless stretch of stars. And for a fleeting instant, one of those stars pulsed, a faint, golden shimmer, before fading into the black. Elias saw it and smiled. Rest well, friend. The universe had called it a monster. The council had feared it. But for one small world and one stubborn human, the apex predator had been something else entirely, proof that even the fiercest of beings could choose to protect instead of destroy. And in that choice it had changed everything. The story of Vera this Nine spread across the galaxy in whispers, of a creature that defied extinction, of men who defied their masters, and of a world that refused to be erased. And somewhere in the deep, dark silence of space, where empires trembled and stars were born, the legend of the Guardian lived on, not as a weapon but as a reminder that sometimes, the deadliest predator in the universe was the one that learned compassion. And sometimes that predator was human.